I'm Jim Stones. I'm the headmaster at Shildon College and I've had the honour of being on the ISC committee for about, just over a year now. And it's my great pleasure to introduce a team of people who, rather than just talking about the things we've been talking about today, are actually doing it and have been brave enough to take the plunge and actually get this collaborative learning stuff implemented. We've just had a flavour of the end result, but now Sacha, Laura and Rosie are going to describe their journey.
Hello, it's me again. I'm going to be hopefully quite brief. What I want to do is talk to you really about the kind of strategic background to how we got to where we are today, which I know is of interest to a lot of you. And then Laura and Rosie are going to talk about using iPads and Google Docs and Google Sites, respectively, from the sort of teacher's point of view about sort of how does all of this work, where does it take us, and what's it all about, and what are the sort of benefits and the end results. If you want to follow on Twitter, you can probably see me on there, but that's me, at Sacha van Straten. Really want to stick with collaborative learning because it's very much what underpins everything we do with e-learning. Again, thinking about Nick's comment this morning, what is e-learning? For us, the sort of easiest way to sort of describe it is it's about bringing people together. And it's not limiting learning to a schedule on a timetable in a particular room at a particular time of the day. It's a much broader speak than that. And so I just want to spend a moment thinking about who is a learner. We talk about students as being learners, but I was quite encouraged at hearing Steve Molyneux earlier saying you've got to start with the teachers because that's where I start from. And it's very much my view that in terms of school, we are one learning community, and I include the teachers in that just as much, if not more so, than I do the students. I've been sort of 2 years ago when I sort of took up the IT reins here together with Greg Anker, the deputy head who leads on IT. We went to our first Haileybury Group Directors of IT meeting. I think it was at Habs Boys within Phillips, and we sat there and we took notes and we asked one or two shy questions. And we came away, and on the drive back here to Berkhamsted, we looked at each other and said, we are the country bumpkins. We are the people at the sort of back of the class who are a bit clueless in terms of where other schools are and where we're at. And we said, we'll give ourselves 2 years to rectify that situation. And the more we kind of looked into what other schools were doing, we went and visited other schools, and we had vendors come and meet us, and we went to see trade shows. It became apparent to us that very often the wrong questions when it comes to IT get asked of the wrong people. And the people who really have to use it don't get consulted until it's too late, when the kit's been bought and put in. And I thought, again, Steve's talk about the sort of substitution, it isn't a substitute. You end up with chaos and frustration and failure. We could see that. We didn't see learning as the be-all saviour. We disliked the term virtual learning environment because it somehow suggested that it's a different type of learning, whereas to us it's just learning, and our view was that technology should support and encourage and nurture learning and innovative thinking. And we thought actually, before we get to the students, we need to teach the teachers. And so one of the things that we did was we spent about a year, while we were still investigating what we were going to use as a learning platform, we spent a number of staff insets, and Mark was very generous in giving us time and space to do this, to actually educate the staff body about the pedagogy of technology in education, and to get them thinking and having an active dialogue with us and with each other about how might I use technology, and not think about the toy, not think about the gizmo, but actually think about where do I want to end up? How do I want to make learning better? And if we take that as our starting point, our view was, whatever we end up deploying and implementing will work so much better. And so in that sense also that everybody can teach, that anybody can teach anybody something else. As a media teacher, I set my sixth form students a task, which is in Photoshop or Final Cut Pro, your task is to find something I don't know and then teach it to me, so that I can then teach it to next year's students. Which is a kind of weird inversion of the traditional teaching model, but it works. However, while I'm quite comfortable with that view of teaching. I'm very conscious lots of people aren't. And it requires a sort of substantial shift in the culture of a school to enable that to happen. So, if we look at the sorts of range of tools that people can use, and you'll see now the students before us were talking about all sorts of different tools. Some of them are open source, some of them are, the Khan Academy, YouTube. We cannot control them, we cannot be knowledgeable about every single one, however desirable that may be. And actually, it's not important that we don't know. But what I think is important is to understand this idea of, sort of students as, I think it was Steve mentioned, was it as interactive learners? Yeah. That actually students are change agents. They are not these empty vessels waiting to sit lovingly in a classroom while we spout knowledge that they will dutifully note down either in a paper or on a laptop or on an iPad, and somehow they will become these all-knowing replicas of us. It doesn't work. They are coming with an incredibly and increasingly wide range of skills. And we ignore those skills at our peril. And we ignore the fact that they do have this skills base that they are coming in with and they are developing outside of what we do at our cost. The fact that teachers don't know everything is not a barrier. And we've done a lot of work on trying to reassure teachers that you can have a go. It doesn't matter if you get it wrong. It does not diminish your status as a teacher or as a professional if you try it and you get it wrong, because at least you gave it a go, and what you can do is document what worked, didn't work, and share it and collaborate. And then that makes things better. A number of people today have talked about what in effect I think is digital literacy. I think we need to look at that, and we're trying to do that, and hopefully you've got a flavour of that from our students. And I think finally also we need to look at Mark Prensky's 2001 coinage of this term, digital natives. I think it served a purpose then, it serves a divisive purpose now. I mean, we are all digitally enabled to some degree or another. But I'm sure a number of you, as I do, see students who are less technically capable than we are, and some of them are more so. And I think that it's important to recognise that. There was a 2005 study by two researchers called Livingston and Bowler, and they did a sort of big study of the attitudes of 12 to 19-year-old students. They found 6 years ago that 21% were cutting and pasting material they found on the internet and submitting it as their own original work, and they didn't see anything wrong in that. 6 years on, it's probably a substantially higher number than that, and these are the sorts of challenges that we face. It is not access to information that we should be barring. We most certainly shouldn't be doing that. I don't bar Facebook, I don't bar YouTube at school, it's pointless. They will get onto it anyway. What we do is we try to engage students and teachers in a positive dialogue about what works, what is the right way to make effective change, not just for now, but for your life in the future. The array of different tools that are used, if you look at this video, 60 seconds, there'll be 600 new YouTube videos, 60 new blogs, 1,500 blog posts, 168 million emails in 60 seconds. We cannot contain that, we cannot control it. It is in and around us and amongst us now. And our job is to try and harness the best bits, educate about the dodgy bits, and provide a platform in which students can work together and learn from each other and learn from us to really make the most of all of those fabulous opportunities. Professor Martin Weller at Open University has written this fantastic book called The Digital Scholar. It's a very accessible book, I thoroughly recommend it. The Digital Scholar by Martin Weller. And one of his chapter headings has sort of stolen a documentary title from Errol Morris called Fast, Cheap and Out of Control. And he makes the point that technology is moving at a far faster pace than we are. And we are never going to catch up. He also makes the point that technology costs next to nothing or nothing, and therefore students are taking it, and we've seen that with the students here already. They're using YouTube, they're using the Khan Academy, and they are personalising their learning. And I think the challenge for us is to try and incorporate that into all the other things we do that we need to do to get students through GCSEs and A-levels and into good universities. But I like this t-shirt because it kind of sums up, the challenges that we face. There are these massive companies doing all sorts of really innovative and exciting things that we can harness if we choose to do so. But that requires us to shift our starting point and adjust our parameters. I love theory, but I'm not going to bore you. I'll just give you one quote from Ned Peter. He said, "We should see learning as a set of relationships rather than as a system." The reality is that most secondary education is systemic, because we are looking, particularly in the independent sector, to get students top GCSEs, get them top A-levels, get them into Oxbridge, get them into Russell Group universities, and then we've ticked our box. That's what parents are paying for. The reality is, though, that in order to prepare students for the way that universities are going to work, and to enable them to have a better understanding of how they're going to have to work in the world of work, this kind of theory of sort of social constructivism and connectivism, in which students and teachers mesh their ideas together to build something that is bigger than the sum of its parts, is the way forward. And again, I think we ignore that, whether we choose to take that on board in part or in whole, at our peril. This sort of Hackney's phrase, the sage on the stage becomes the guide by the side, is rather overworn. But I like it because it neatly encapsulates the shift we need to make with teachers. And that's why I spend quite a lot of my time talking and training teachers in how to make those changes. So lastly, we opted in the end for Google Apps for Education. It's absolutely free, which is always nice. Burst was happy. But we went for it because it was created with very sort of firm and clear educational principles. It makes learning collaborative, it's always on, students can access it at a time to suit. And Greg Anker and I had this sort of mantra when we were looking at what we were going to use. And we said, whatever we choose has to make life easier for teachers and learning better for students. And I think, in terms of have we achieved that, we probably have. I'm not going to talk to you about the actual use of Google Docs. Rosie's going to do that. I just want to say finally, Google Analytics is great because at the back end, I can track every document. I can track every website. I can see who uses it. I can see where in the world they are. I can see what machine they're using. I can see what operating system they're using. I can tell you what browser they're using. And I can gather all of that data. This is from last week. I'm a bit sad that actually Rosie's website's Pride and Prejudice is actually beating my entire ICT website. I'm a bit miffed about that. There's Modern Languages German website number 3. I can look at this and I can feed back to teachers and heads of department and say, that site's working. The rest of your team should look at that. Or that document is in effect trending for me. They are using it. And I can see peaks and troughs. But this big trough in my head, I thought, what the hell's going on? Of course, I realised everybody was giving their GCSE and A-level classes timed essays, because that's what they've got to do in the exams. The moment study leave began, we rocketed back up. And we've gone from, when we had Moodle before, 50, 60 users a week, we're peaking at now over 1,000 a day. So, it makes quite a big difference. But without further ado, I want to hand you over to the two bright sparks on the table, starting with Rory.
Hi everybody, my name's Laura Doggett. I'm Head of Languages here at Berkhamsted, and I would like to share with you some of the collaborative work we've been doing in the MFL department recently, particularly using iPads. You can find out a little bit more about our journey with iPads on my blog at lauradoggett.com, and I do share and chat a lot on Twitter, so do get in touch that way if you'd like to. So first of all, I'd like to tell you a bit about how the rationale behind my vision for e-learning in languages came about. Jim Knight stole my thunder. This is actually a Hertfordshire prep school. It's a very grainy photo, but you'll forgive me for that, in the 1930s. I'm sure, frighteningly, quite a few of us here will only be too aware that not a great deal has changed about a lot of the classrooms that we work in since then. In the 90s and the 2000s, the chairs and tables might have disappeared and the benching might have appeared around the edges of classrooms, and ICT suites were born, and they might have ended up looking a little bit like this. For a linguist, this is a nightmare. Students are isolated, they're staring at screens, they can't interact intrapersonally at all, and their link with the teacher is severed. I can say with some assurance that outstanding language lessons do not routinely happen in classrooms that are designed like this. Many of your language classrooms probably look a bit like those in my department. There are chairs and tables and windows, it's very straightforward. But it does force a bit of a reality check on the concept of 21st century learning, which can, if we let it, get a bit science fiction. How can we map traditional values and traditional subject material and traditional expectations and our traditional buildings onto a paradigm which includes strategies for collaborative and personalised digital learning? That is where so many of us, I feel, get stuck. My view was that we needed to aim for excellence with the best tools that we could find to fit our context and our needs. So I had to think, what does excellent learning in modern languages actually look like? Well, the teacher is still important and needs to facilitate learning and not just worry about fixing broken mice. The students face the front of the room and each other, not the backs of each other's heads or the wall. The tools that we give them to work with are active and they allow them to be productive and creative. Digital textbooks for me are not what this is all about. I didn't want just something that acted in a passive way like an e-reader. So how did I move towards this particular vision? Well, I asked. I presented, I think, what must have been quite a compelling case for replacing a long, obsolete and dysfunctional ICT suite with iPads. I'd done a lot of research, I'd compared different solutions, and I asked for twice the amount of kit that I needed, knowing that I stood a better chance of a positive outcome in the end if I started big. Sorry, Mark. We now have 60 iPads across 2 sites and a highly functioning new Wi-Fi system. I asked for more than that, maybe it didn't get to you. For staff, being able to teach a lesson in their usual classroom with all their usual expectations and their resources and embedding a layer of technology within that has certainly been rewarding so far. And we're finding the benefits of a hybrid approach to technology involving both books and paper resources. They can share desk real estate really effectively, and I find that's been fantastic. So, in terms of where we're at now, I think that the e-learning journey is itself the outcome, and I hope that this, I'm telling you something you already know very well, that e-learning is not about tick boxes, and anyone who thinks they have sorted out e-learning and ticked it off their list is probably quite misguided. So it's taken a year in the making, about 2 months of planning and organisation to actually get the iPads into the classrooms. So I suppose one thing to take from that is it's not necessarily the quickest, easiest fix. And this is a picture of my first ever class with iPads, which is quite a momentous occasion. My Year 9 boys, as you can see, were thrilled by the idea. However, it is a continuous, hybrid and somewhat messy journey. My inbox is permanently full of questions. There's a constant ebb and flow of creativity and activity and interest as we learn new stuff all the time, and that's just the teachers. What I did was, I had to deal with the fact that I have real people. My team is not made up of carbon copies of me, and I'm an unashamed geek, I'm afraid. And because of those varying levels of confidence in my team, I had to consider how to let them get on with their lives, but with the iPads in their world. So I left things very open. I didn't set a sort of minimum expectation about what they should do with the iPads. I just put up a shared Google document for booking them and let them get on with it. The result was that over the first 2 weeks, 57 classes were taught across the 2 sites using iPads. I was thrilled. So now we are relearning what happens in our classrooms, and we are certainly challenging our existing practice. We've asked a lot of questions about how we organise learning. I personally feel we're blowing apart the fallacy of the digital native and the digital immigrant, because students are far from all knowing. Being an expert in Angry Birds certainly doesn't automatically make your digital work outstanding. To quote Fraser Spear's, handheld learning, it isn't the future, it's the present for us. And it's been researched and discussed and trialled for 10 years plus now. So I feel really good that we are making this step, because we've been talking about it for a long time. I feel that the tool itself isn't important. There's been a lot of Apple talk today. We happened to choose iPads at the time we committed to the project because they represented the best quality product at the most appropriate time for us. I would probably choose iPads again, making that decision right now, but ask me again in a year and that might have changed. So, for me, languages, in terms of student work, the iPads have helped us really develop work along this continuum from collaboration to competition. Students have a learning buddy who is their wingman. This is one of the habits that I've put in place. So any problems or technical issues or how do you questions have to go to the learning buddy first. If they can't work it out together, then they can ask me, and 9 times out of 10, those questions don't ever get to me. When working as a group, my students are finding the whole body of work that they produce collaboratively is greater than the sum of its parts. So I've seen quite a few projects where some of the kids were talking earlier about that. And that shared accountability really helps everyone want to raise their game. I'm seeing a lot more stretch, and it's helping us to build towards a real genuine sense of purpose for the work. And I think that interplay of collaboration and competition is very powerful there. Bearing in mind that I'm also leading a subject that's nationally in decline, I'm really pleased that the level of engagement and enjoyment is on the up as well. And I do expect that that enthusiasm will stretch beyond the novelty value. Shifting the focus between outcomes and process allows us to think about how the learning's happening, as well as what the product looks like. That changes the kinds of questions that we get asked, from I don't get what to do in this task to I want to be able to do this, how can I make it happen? I think that's a really subtle but very important shift. Another really positive outcome in the way that we're working is that we're boosting independence with students who may, on occasion, otherwise expect a certain level of spoon feeding. Solutions-focused learning promotes a lot more independence and problem solving. I was really pleased when I was doing some speaking recordings with my Year 11 group when they were practicing for controlled assessment, that several students, without any input from me, had organised themselves into pairs, with one student's iPad doing the recording and the other accessing some notes they'd saved on Google Docs. They could then learn their speaking work by downloading it onto their iPods and listening at home and on the bus, and that was the real result for me. Now, I also believe that this project is changing the culture of collaboration between the staff and my team. We're slowly generating a dialogue about learning that just didn't have a place in our routine before. One of my main tools for supporting them is a private Google site which we use for sharing ideas and resources and feedback. We pass on links to good work, which can be used then as models for students attempting jobs for the first time. I'm also posting tailor-made beginner's guides for different apps, and we're collaborating on things like issues and glitches so that we can avoid repeatedly falling into the same traps. The site, interestingly, and I didn't expect this, has become quite the hub for debate and discussion about the value of ICT and the direction of change for learning with technology. Finally, one of the apps that we've enjoyed using is called Screen Chomp. I don't know if you know it. Year 7 had spent a lesson learning about clothes and made some little recorded descriptions to show what they'd understood. I've got a little clip for you here to show you one.
Bonjour, je porte en casquette bleue, en t-shirt noir, en short vert et des sandales noires. Au revoir.
I was really pleased with the little pieces of work that they'd done. It was very quick and very simple, and the students really enjoyed making these clips. And what I did was I then shared some of the examples of their work with my followers on Twitter. I was absolutely thrilled when, very quickly afterwards, the app developer for Screen Chomp replied from the US, congratulating my boys on their great work. I showed the boys the tweet in their next lesson, and they were so chuffed. It was a really lovely moment. So I'll also be looking to develop further opportunities to collaborate, for my students, I guess, to collaborate outside of my classroom on an international level, because I think the confidence and sense of pride it brings to them is a real pleasure to see. Thank you very much.
Good afternoon. Just before I start, I'm Rosie McColl. I'm Deputy Head of English at Berkhamsted, and just to apologise, I've got the perennial end of term cold, so I hope you can hear me. Can you all hear me?
Yeah.
You're not normally this croaky. Anyway, so I have been teaching English here at Berkhamsted for about 8 years, and I'm not going to talk to you today about theories. I'm just going to talk to you about how collaborative learning is used in practice, and I'm going to be talking about mainly Google Docs. I think you heard one of my students, Max, speaking earlier. Good way to start with is just clarify what my aims are. In everything I do as an English teacher, I'm trying to achieve the following 3 things. I'm trying to empower my pupils, I'm trying to nurture their self-belief, and above all, I'm trying to get them to be independent thinkers. And the whole idea is for the teacher to take a step back and for the pupil to become the focus of their own learning. Okay? So, I'm going to be talking to you about Google Apps. Now, before I do that, when I first came to Berkhamsted, I was given the task, I had to inherit a group of boys, set 3 boys, and I was told I had to get them through a piece of coursework on Sinus Mana by George Eliot, and not a desirable feat, okay? So, basically, I decided, sorry, what was I going to say? During my teaching of this text, it was going slowly. The boys obviously not engaged in this 19th century text, but one day a boy came up with an amazing idea on symbolism in Sinus Mana, and I must have said to him at the time, I've never thought of that before, what a fantastic point you just made. And this was a kind of light bulb moment for me, because from that point, the idea that this boy came up with appears in every single essay, okay, from then until the end of year 11. So it really taught me a lesson that all the things I was teaching these boys, you know, they were writing them down, they were very dutiful, they were hard-working. But if I could get these boys to come up with ideas themselves, then the ideas would hit home. So this really forms the basis of everything I try and do in my teaching. So the most memorable ideas are often the ones that the pupils come up with themselves. So, linked to this,
check the questions carefully, because sometimes you'll be asked to compare.
So just to explain that, too big. Linked to this, every year I produce a revision DVD for my year 11s. The idea is that in the 8-week process before the exams, I give them timed essays, as all teachers do, and instead of getting them to write down areas for improvement, I record each person, every lesson, telling themselves, basically, telling the camera what they need to improve and what they need to focus on in the exam. So by the time we get to the real GCSEs, all the pupils have recorded their thoughts and their own targets. And what happens is this creates a brilliant collaborative resource, because all the pupils are listening to themselves giving advice. So by this stage, the teacher's completely taking the back seat. I'm kind of out of the process. I don't appear in the DVD. It's the girls speaking to themselves the night before their exam or the morning of their exam, and they produce some amazing stuff, and I'll tell you the results in a second. But this is an example of the work I would do with year 11.
It just means language/writing techniques. On the media paper, don't just say extravagant language, give a specific technique. You spell argument A-R-G-U-M-E-N-G to get it right. Get the audience and the purpose right for the question you're answering. So, like, if you're writing for a radio show, address the listeners.
Don't forget to use a range of sentence structures and paragraph lengths. They like one-line paragraphs.
Yeah. Use more rhetorical devices and make a list at the beginning, and use more semicolons and colons
And specific paragraphs, don't just write one massive long one. That's bad.
Make a list of specific techniques so you don't forget to include them.
Okay, so just so you know, all those girls in that class got an A star last summer, and you know, I've been using this process for the last 3 years, and it really does work for the stronger candidates and the weaker candidates, because again, by that stage, it is all about them. Okay. Now, I'm going to move on now to talk about Google Docs. So this is going to link back to what the pupils were talking about earlier. So I've been using Google Docs since Sacha introduced the Google Apps to Berkhamsted last September, last year. And they have been absolutely brilliant. I've got all my departments are now using them. and I'm going to tell you a bit about how they work in practice. So basically, a very simple thing that I would do with a class would be to create a document that's just a simple discussion forum, give them an essay title, give them a critical viewpoint, and ask them to comment. And the way I think this really works, the reason it really works, is that ultimately all pupils take pride in their work. And as soon as they realise that their work is going to be seen by a wider audience, even if it's just their other classmates, they really do step up a gear. And the first time I would introduce this idea to them, a lot of them would, get quite scared, quite shocked. Do you mean other people are going to be able to read this? But actually, because they're naturally competitive, because they take pride in their work, this process, I think, really promotes them as learners, and everybody they all seem to step up a gear. Also, if you've got weaker pupils or people struggling for ideas, as soon as they log onto a Google Doc, they see what other people have come up with, and they then can be inspired themselves. So at a basic level, they've worked really well as sort of discussion forums, but I know that lots of you will be using similar things in your schools. But the most exciting thing that I'm doing at the moment is with the Google Docs with particularly A-level students, and this is an example, and it's in a screenshot I know, but a few weeks ago I was away at a course and I was running out of time. I had to get my year 13s through the whole of Wuthering Heights. I didn't feel I could waste the time just setting them an essay to do. I needed them to get through this section of the text. So quite shocking. I know there are some English teachers here today because I've just met my old English teacher, Mr. Wood, at the back. But I'm sure lots of English teachers would be shocked to hear that I taught Wuthering Heights. If you know the text, I took the whole of the middle section of the novel, the whole section that deals with the central character and her madness and her death and the birth of the new generation, and I have not taught this section in the classroom. All I did was pasted it into a Google Doc. So I downloaded it from Project Gutenberg, pasted it in. I put up some simple comments and questions for the pupils and left them to it. So when I came back from my course, they had produced an absolutely amazing piece of work. The comments that surround this document just go on and on and on. Okay, you can scroll down. I put a link in the document to quite a complex idea to do with Freudian theory. And again, one girl in the group has now become something of an expert in Freud, linked to Wuthering Heights. And again, I believe that if I'd introduced this concept in the classroom, she might have noted it down, others would have written it down, but she now feels she owns this idea, and her enthusiasm for this subject is incredible. So she's now done lots of wider reading, and I do believe that in the exam, if she writes about it, it's going to be very convincing. It's going to be much more convincing than it would have been if I'd said, turn to page 30, we're going to talk about Freud in this section. So that's been a really huge step forward. And again, it's not just me and my department doing this. I've got lots of colleagues who are using the same ideas and the same technology. So I'm going to click this. Okay, I'll just use that.
Sorry,
okay, sorry.
I don't think of leaving too short.
Right, also with Google Docs, I often would take a class to a computer room and give them a task where they have to collaborate together as a class on a document. So this was a piece of work I did with the scene from Macbeth. Took a class of Year 9 girls to the computer room. Again, instead of me teaching the text in the conventional way, I just said to them, read it and bring it to life. And again, it was fantastic what they managed to achieve. Words they didn't understand, they were looking up on an online dictionary, pasting them in for commenting so others could see it. Some people started putting links to sound files in there, so we had the owl that shrieked, suddenly there was a link to a YouTube and an owl shrieking. They found it was fun, and to be honest, there was a stage when they were just messing around, highlighting each other's work, making things different colours, but once you get through that stage, they actually generated a lot of work in that time. And here's what one of my students said about that. She liked the idea that there were other people reading her work, it wasn't just the pupil and the teacher. Another really exciting development this term, we've got 2 top sets of girls this year reading Pride and Prejudice for their IGCSE exam. I realised that I was timetabled at the same time as my colleague, so we thought it would be a great opportunity to try some cross-set collaboration using Google Docs. So we both booked our groups into computer rooms, kept them as separate groups, but we created documents that we then shared with 2 people from my set and 2 people from my colleague's set. And they got into the computer rooms, didn't know who they were going to work with, and what happened, again, was brilliant, because they very, very quickly got the task, they opened up an email, it had a link to their document, they realised they were collaborating with friends in a different group who were on a different floor of the school. They very quickly sorted out who was going to do what, and the beauty of this is, I think, for my subject, obviously, as teachers of literature, we're going to be teaching the same text often, but in very different ways. So what interests me might not interest a colleague. If I think Mr. Collins' letter in Pride and Prejudice is a key moment, another colleague might have focused more on his proposal to Elizabeth Bennet. So what happened was the pupils were the experts. They were sharing their expertise and saying, well, we've done a lot of work on this, and that was all going into the document, and that's been brilliant. And I think that's linked into what Sacha was saying, that the Pride and Prejudice website that's a spin-off of this is getting lots of hits because the girls are kind of enthused about it and everyone's in it together, and it's not just about what they're learning in their single class set. Excuse me. Another great bonus of this is that I now will share ideas from pupils who've now left the school. So my year 13s last year studied Wuthering Heights in the same way that Max is studying Wuthering Heights. I gave them similar tasks. For example, I would give the whole set a lot of reading material on religion in the novel, sent them away and said to them, put your ideas into a Google Doc. So I've done the same thing this year, and I've said to the year 13s this year, I've said, do this work, and as a reward, I will then share with you all the work that was produced last year. And they love that idea, and they've done the work, and again I can track on the Google Docs how many times they're looking at this, and every time we have a test, these documents are getting so many hits. That's another great initiative. Just to talk lastly about the sites. So we've set up quite a lot of sites with Google Apps. The site is so easy to use, the students find it very, very straightforward. They're they're simplistic, but you can put a site up within seconds. This is a creative writing website that I founded last year, and it was originally run by Year 11s, but it quickly incorporated sixth form students. I'm now running it as a co-curricular club every Thursday. And did Lucy speak about this? Yeah, so you've all heard about this from Lucy in Year 8, but this has been fantastic. And I've got, you see this lovely motif here? That's from my PR manager who's in Year 8, and her particular skill is in designing visual aids, and that's what she does every week. She comes along and she produces these fantastic posters for us. And others are just learning from each other. So I don't know if Lucy spoke about, there was an occasion recently where there was a girl at the club who said, I really want to write a short story, but I can't think of an opening line. So Lucy leapt up and said, I love writing opening lines, I'll create you a web page on the site to inspire you. So again, that's there for everybody to use, and that's happening a lot. I'm getting emails all the time. So again, just to wrap up, in terms of the future, I think we've got to bear in mind that we're not educating our students just to pass exams. Obviously, that's the first aim. But for the future, I think it was Stephen Heffel said this, that these skills of researching, evaluating and collaborating, these are the new 21st century literacies. And my experience of using particularly Google Apps has been that we are honing these skills to a high level, and it is raising achievement, and it is going from them through the exams as well as preparing them for the future.
Thank you very much to Laura and to Rosie. I really think that's been a fantastic session. Can I just do a quick plug, which is that Mark and I get a lot of requests from people like you to come and visit us and talk about what we do and how we work. And Mark had this great idea last term, which is we're going to run an open day, which will be February the 28th, so middle of part of next term. And it's not a conference, it is a chance for you to send teams of people of all different levels to come and see us in action, to actually see lessons running, and to meet us and meet other teachers, some of whom are very skilled, some of whom are on that journey towards becoming, transformed and digitally literate, and to meet lots of our students. So the plan is the morning session, we're very much focused on e-learning in terms of what happens in classrooms. And the afternoon session will be led by Dave Pacey, our Director of IT, and that's going to look much more at infrastructure, asset discovery, MFDs, all of the sort of things which have been mentioned today that you need to get. We just put the Maroon Wi-Fi system in here, which is fab. How have we done the sort of back-end stuff that supports this learning that happens in and around school and beyond? So it is not a kind of sort of set-piece event in quite the same way that today is, but there will be a structure to it, and I think we've got a provisional running order of how we want things to happen, which we'll be sending out to you very shortly. But I just want to sort of plug it now to say that February the 28th, please add it to your iCal now, and tell everybody who might be interested in your schools that they are very welcome, and we hope that will be a learning discovery day for everybody. But can I also give a round of applause again to sort of Laura and Rosie?